That's my take.
Everyone's like, oh, it's our bigger brains. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, it's part of the story. But like, Wales could be making this show if it was just that. I'm Ella Al-Shamahi, I'm a paleoanthropologist, an evolutionary biologist, and I'm the presenter of Human. We were not destined for greatness. And I think that shocks a lot of people. A lot of people think that we were the new kid on the block. As soon as Homo sapiens turned up, it was game over for all the other species. And let me tell you, it was not game over for all the other species. The evidence kind of alludes to potential showdowns with the other species, potential, it's still very controversial, and us not necessarily succeeding. Like, for example, around the same time.
Why is this shot in the key of Real Housewives? You know what I mean? Like, what is this presentation? It's all goofy. Ooh, Clarky, ooh.
Time.
It's like Real Housewives of Evolution.
There was one cave that was filled with Homo sapiens, and there was another cave that was filled with Neanderthals. That basically means they were both living there at the same time. And it looks like only the Neanderthals continued living there. We quite likely became locally extinct. It's not a story of a species that turns up and is immediately brilliant. We had to evolve quite a bit. And I think we had a bit of luck on our side.
Notice how nothing was said in that entire thing. Not a single isolated claim. There's not a single scientific claim. There's no biological descriptions. She literally just described a hypothetical type of children's book, and with some quirky music. Do, 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 do. Boo, 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 boo. So what do we get wrong about evolution?
You know that image of one species leading to another species, leading to another species? I have a problem with that for two reasons. One is obviously, where are the women? The second problem I have with that image is that it gives the impression that evolution is just really linear. So one species dies out, gives rise to another species.
What does that mean? One species dies out, gives rise to another species? What does gives rise mean? These terms are just killing me now. Like, I can't unhear them. Extendingly at $10, imagine if humans united and waged real war on other species. Any predictions on how that would turn out? For real. Like, just listen to what she said, though. Like, gives rise. So a species dies out, and then what she's saying is this other species that's not that exists. They don't rise up. They're just there. They're leftover or whatever. But none of this accounts for the claim, which is species exist and then branch off to other species. Not die and then gives rise. That's not what's in question. What does gives rise mean? I mean, are you guys noticing the sort of vernacular that's very popularized now with these types? Emergent property, gives rise, emerges, there's other ones. There's other romantic ones that I hear a lot.
Et cetera, et cetera. And we now know that that is just not the case. Human evolution is so much more complicated, that there were loads of us living on the planet at the same time. Different groups were interbreeding. We actually only know the tip of the iceberg of how many human species are out there. Since I've
George Floyd. Shout out to George Floyd.
been a paleoanthropologist, we have discovered so many more species. Like, our family tree got a lot bigger in the last few years.
What? Because of the banana?
And so it's funny that
Yes, Ortis.
that image that is so
No more dying, only branching.
ingrained in people's minds when they think of human evolution is just actually quite inaccurate.
So that section was what did we get wrong, but she didn't actually say what we got wrong. She only said people think of it as a linear thing, which ultimately has to be linear because in time, processes need to happen. So point A to point B needs to happen. Even if you fractal those things, it's still linear. Each process needs to be from point A to point B in time. It's not like you can just appeal to some weird mystery ambiguity about the process and just call it nonlinear because you don't understand it.
Epic question. I'd marry the Neanderthal. This is kind of controversial, but I would probably avoid Homo erectus. They were kind of earlier, and therefore I'm assuming a bit more primitive, and I don't know how much I'd...
You know what this is, actually? This is the beginning. Not that... Maybe it's not the beginning. Maybe we're midway through. This could be a new sect of entertainment and history synthesis, if you will, of standpoint theory for evolution. That's what it kind of is reading like. We're getting the woman's take on the post-diction narrative. That's what we're getting here.
Trust them. This is the one I'd make out with. This is not PG-13, what I was about to say. This is Homo floresiensis, who a lot of us nicknamed the Hobbit.
That's a baby. That's just a baby. You goblin, you absolute golem. You should be thrown in a cage. Talking about making out with an ancient baby skull. You're sick. You're sick. Look at that face. That's a face of an empty vesseled goblin.
After Lord of the Rings, because they're basically about 1 meter tall. It's like the brain size of a chimpanzee. And yet it was bipedal, so standing upright on 2 legs, making stone tools. It had the behavior of a human, and yet is this size.
It did? It had the behavior of a human? How did you determine that? Let me guess. Things you just made up.
And this is just, in my opinion, the most bizarre find. I just want to know them. You know, in a make-out session, you'd have a certain amount of time where you could chat. Just tell me about yourself. I suddenly realised that it...
What are you, 15? What is wrong with you? You're a grown woman. Talking about make-out sessions with skulls, with baby skulls and midgets, evolutionary dwarfs. What is happening here? What is happening? This really is. It's like the girls, get the girls' take on evolution. It's really the producers, if you blame them. I mean, any of these shows, reality television and the rest, there are these wrangling producers that guide every single word out of these people's mouths. We're going to talk about making out. How about, we'll do a cute thing, like which one would you make out with? Would you do that? Oh, sure. Anything for the BBC. Anything to get my name out there. Sure. What does it hurt talking about making out with a midget skull?
It looks like a kink. They're never going to be able to include this. When people think about our large brains, they think that the size of the brain is what makes us brilliant. Truthfully, Neanderthals had very similar sized brains to us. Elephants, whales, they have big brains too. And yet, they're not watching this series. It's about the organisation, in my opinion, of that brain. We seem to have a capacity to copy each other and learn from each other. And also, we had the advantage of many, many people. Look,
No, that's not the distinction either. So she's like, there's got to be something unique about humans that's not unique, that's different. That's the symmetry breaker between other animals who also have large brains. Dolphins and elephants and orcas and things like this. Relative their size, right? They have a decent sized brain. That's just a machine we're looking at, a biological machine. So she tries to move away from size as the determining arbiter for the difference maker. But then she moves over to our brains are organized in a way where we copy each other. Well, no. Animals copy each other. There are animals like bees and ants, like they copy each other. They follow suit. They move in one uniform behavior many times. So obviously that's not what makes us unique, is just the ability to copy. There's nothing the naturalist can say that could actually distinguish the difference. Why? Because the difference needs to be metaphysical. It can't be just physical. It has to be metaphysical. But she's trying really hard to make it not that. And by metaphysical, let's just skip it to the claim. Made in the image of God. A status. Not It's not reduced to just the body and biology.
All of these are theories, right? There was a lot of Homo sapiens compared to, well, for example, the Neanderthals. That means you have a bigger source of people inventing, copying, perfecting the technology. If you have 50 people in your group, you've all got to get really, really good at everything. Hunting, gathering, etc., because you've all got to work really, really hard to survive. If there's 500 of you in your group, suddenly you can start specializing. All of those people inventing, perfecting, and tinkering. Everyone's like, oh, it's our bigger brains. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, it's part of the story. But like, whales could be making this show if it was just that.
That's it? That's your big distinction between humans and other animals, is that we tinker and that we have a lot of us? What are you talking about, man? What are you saying? This is a rambling idiot.
I don't think we fully understand how hard life was. The Neanderthals were contending with some really, really cold climates. I would really struggle with that. Life as any kind of human before agriculture was very, very difficult. That's why I always laugh at people that talk about the paleo diet, because I'm like, they were all dead by my age. The Neanderthals, towards the end of their time, were just kind of riddled.
Yeah, monkeys tinker, yeah. You know, crows tinker. Crows. Ravens, you know, they tinker
with diseases because of inbreeding.
What's with the annoying music? It's like authorization tunes. It sells the authorizations, like the production value, you know. It's like, oh, they have the whimsical music, like it's the opening scene of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I must listen now. I mean, she's in a dark studio with a distant light. Something's going on here. She has a purple leather jacket on. I'm all ears.
So I think if you had to be a Neanderthal, you'd probably want to be an earlier Neanderthal, because, yeah, life got pretty bleak. I am quite moved by certain things about the other species. I have seen up close Neanderthal handprints. I can't even say that without getting goosebumps. That image that we have of the Neanderthal, that kind of like, I don't know, knuckle-dragging ape man, you don't imagine them putting their hands in red paint or red ochre to create these impressions. In that same cave, there were kiddie handprints. So the kids of these Neanderthals were also learning it. And that, I think, is something that we relate to so much. Like, what other species walks up to a wall and thinks, I want to leave a mark? It's bonkers. Like, that is something that is so us.
Wow. It's so female, that take. So, I mean, it's very emotionally driven, isn't it? It's like, what I find most surprising about the other species is that they had hands and there was mud. And there was handprints because there was mud. She like invented this moment that was like a scene from like a Hallmark movie, and there's this like, I'm a human, you're a human, connect with the earth. I'm looking at my own palm reflection. The contours of the mud show me a version of myself. It's like, way to transpose your own philosophy onto something you're arguing is basically a retarded midget. Aiden Clark, $5. Do you have any videos or arguments against evolution new to your channel? Yeah, I have a couple of debates. I mean, the debates themselves, Aiden, are the arguments. So you could go to my channel, or there's one big one that's, you can scroll down, Aiden, called Evolution is Fake. It's written in pink letters on the thumbnail. Watch that whole debate, and you'll see the arguments. I'll lead just Aiden before, if you know, so you don't have to do that now. I do basically a cross-examination of their own claims. One simple one, Aiden, is asking them simply, do you believe, according to evolution, that random mutation produced something hyper-specific and specialized, such as a lung, or a liver, or a heart? They have to say yes. So that means there was a time where the heart or the liver or the lung didn't exist the way it exists now, but it's a product of random mutation. They say yes. And then I say, can you tell me how it actually occurs? Can you tell me mechanically how random mutations set off some type of process from point A to point B that produces highly specialized functional mechanisms in the body? Can you tell me how that happens? If you ask that question, which is a totally reasonable question, by the way, it's not an argument from incredulity. I didn't say I can't see how, and therefore I don't believe it. I said, you got to tell me how. That's their burden. So you'll watch Aiden as they go completely either silent or they start losing it like Mark Reed did. Total gravity, $10. I don't know how an atheist can explain bees. Which bees? Total gravity. We're talking about actual bees or Cincinnati? They use language and tools, but they're not intelligent like a human. Well, yeah, what you're pointing to is some sort of purpose, some sort of purpose in nature toward something. Functionality, workability, working toward a goal. Even if they don't conceive of a goal, they exhibit goal-oriented behaviors, which is bizarre from a naturalist perspective. From a Christian perspective, that kind of thing makes sense. It makes sense that something's given purpose. It makes sense that there's a set of operations toward something. That makes sense from a Christian perspective. Because it's, it's all reflective of some type of level of intent, some type of will, animated will, which, evolution, naturalism, atheism cannot tell you what this is. Well, what is this animated will we have? Why is it in a direction? They might say it's not in a direction. They might say everything that's functional is accidentally functional, which, can you imagine biting the bullet on that? Can you imagine looking at the world and there's not a single thing in nature that you look at a micro level or a macro level that isn't the active participation in functionality? In fact, if you said anything was dysfunctional, you'd be arguing for my position that it's functional. You can't argue what's dysfunctional without function. So can you imagine holding that view and looking at the world and everything it does at the particular and the collective level, and going that entire process is produced by accidentalism, which would include their own reasoning. Their own evaluation process is an accidental, unguided, intentless process caused by physical phenomenon. I don't know how an atheist... Okay, got you. I Panini. $5. Have you heard of Robert Sepfer? No, at least fifth of the brother's DNA doesn't match ours. Interesting. No, I didn't hear about that.
I've been so lucky.
Rogue Renaissance, $5. Adds to the goal. Hope you're well, Jimbob and Jortlandi. Here's my duty. Yes, thank you for paying your duty, Rogue Renaissance. Nice to see you here. Happy Saturday to you. Carlisle Phelps, 10 buckaroos. Thank you so much. They build ziggurats, and they don't call ziggurats. To gods, they don't call gods. Through science that doesn't use a method, behind credentials that doesn't bear any weight. Yeah, it's they have an empty worldview. It's a vacant shell of just strict material movement.
Oh, I was really, really excited by the island of Socotra, which they describe as like the most alien-looking place on Earth.
Jess White says, sea otters use stones to break open shellfish. Yeah, even the functionality, like the usefulness that even animals use without even granting them the level of intent and thoughtfulness and communication and philosophy that we have, they still operate Now, it's crazy. The evolution proponent would actually have to say they accidentally produced that through a mutation, which is weird because behaviors aren't identical to mechanisms. Think about that. For instance, you guys remember Breakfast Taco's terrible argument, stuff comes from stuff? Well, the absolute defeater to his argument, to this day, he hasn't been able to give me a counter to this, is that he says everything emerges from stuff, right? That's what he says. Stuff comes from stuff. Well, yeah, if you say, well, we have there's a human being, and what we know inductively about human beings is they come from other human beings, in particular two, a male and a female. And then those humans need a source, and then so forth. So from his argument, he's looking at nature itself and saying all these things, a tree comes from something else, that's stuff. But then he applies it to the entirety of the universe. And he says, well, because everything that we see in the universe comes from another thing, then the universe itself must come from a previous type of thing, like a universe or something. But that doesn't follow, and here's why. The universe isn't a particular. When you ask Breakfast Tacos or any of these guys, what is a universe, they can't. They're done. They would say it's the collection of all things, but that in itself is a metaphysical term, not an isolated particular. That's one problem. The other problem is I was thinking about this and thinking, wait, is there anything that exists that you can't say comes from stuff itself? And you know what it is. Otter. Jess White said the otter has a behavior. The behavior itself, you can't say or claim or isolate the behavior itself coming from the stuff. You know what I mean? So there's no, the way water runs, the way the laws of nature operate in movement, those laws you couldn't say comes from the matter itself. The behavior of something, you can't isolate that where it comes from in the piece of the item itself. It's actually subject to something that's not the item. So then that whole argument's gone. It's over.
Full of like species that
He keeps running it though, doesn't he? He keeps running the argument.
exist there and nowhere else. The thing that I found really, really fascinating about that place was that lots of people on the island have roots that are very, very linked to caves. And we turned up to this one place where people literally lived in front of the caves that they were born in. And they actually still retreat to them during the monsoon.
Yeah, in San Francisco, they're called bridges.
I think evolution is programmed in school to set normies up to perennialism and transhumanism.
Yeah, it might be a concerted effort at this point, but that might be true and it not even be purposeful, like thoughtful. You know why? Because the rejection of God specifically Christianity, taught to people, they have to replace the telos of theosis in Christianity with some other type of theosis, apotheosis, sorry. They have to invert it and then make it about making man making a god of man in their own image. And so transhumanism, I would call a symptom of that. So yeah, you might be right that there's some people who have access to this transhumanist philosophy and accelerationist futurism and all that. And they're kind of going, well, the new direction is transcending Earth itself, transcending barriers and borders and differences and constraints and death. Guess what a transhumanist wants to do? A transhumanist wants to do what Christ did. The transhumanist wants to sing the antiphon. They want to sing trampling death. They want to sing that hymn. That's what they deeply want. And so instead of practicing and participating in God, instead of that, they create their own transformative theosis, their own perversion of it, where they're going to trample death their way, the materialist way. So that's the thing. You don't need a concerted effort to sell transhumanism. Transhumanism would be a natural symptom or result of a rejection of theosis.
Soon. You just think, oh my God, if people were living in those caves like 20 years ago, that means there's probably really, really good archaeology in those caves. So I would say Socotra, just in terms of the science of it, just the beauty of it, and just how alien it looked.
It's got fun music and a xylophone. They must have their stuff together. I'm gonna listen hard. I probably won't question any of it, 'cause it's got this music trailing me into the abyss. I feel like a bunch of gypsies made this.
So I will say I love caves. I really, really love caves. Like for me, they're like a bit of a spiritual experience. I appreciate it makes me sound like an idiot, but anyway. What are
That's not the only thing.
any of us looking for in a home, right? You want somewhere which is safe, protected from the elements. With caves,
Same with the news? Yeah, totally.
they come in all shapes and sizes. Oh, and the one thing you actually do want if you're going to get a cave is if it's like kind of high up and it gives you a good vantage point on the landscape, because then you can be like, oh, you know, that enemy is coming, or, you know, Mary's coming. Good views, good views. You know, just what you're looking for in a flat in London. In terms of things inside that cave, it'd be super helpful if there was like some running water. You want to be able to set a fire and not die from the smoke. So you want there to be good aeration. You also sometimes bury your dead there. Just don't go too far. Like, living.
Ugh. Sounds like brunch. Just sounds like it sounds like I'm at brunch and like I'm hearing somebody at the next table and I'm like, why do I have to hear them? Excuse me, ma'ams. You're talking too loud. You're talking too loud.
And cooking in one place without turning it into a cemetery as well is the way I'd like to live personally.
Extending at $10. Where does matter come from? The previous universe? Actually, I just heard Planet Peterson say just that. That the universe came from a singular point in time. That was the beginning of what they call the rapid expansion called the Big Bang. The Big Bang, if you reverse it, goes to one singular point. They use a mathematical term called the singularity to then reify it into physics, which is a category error, but they do it anyway. And then they say something as stupid as space-time matter expanded from a single moment, single place. And the moment they say place, you ask, if it's a place, then it's inside space-time already. So that, from their view, they're just creating God, a necessary precondition for all things, but just naming it some other physical thing for endless regress, extanglia. You already know the drill, don't you? Because if there is a singularity, if I granted them a reified concept into physics, such as the singularity, they would have to agree that that point in time couldn't be understood through the lens of the space-time matter continuum. It would precede it. So you couldn't actually talk about that initial, they call it the initial state. You couldn't talk about that in a meaningful way. It would have to, get this, transcend our ability to categorize in a universal or particular way about the thing itself. It would transcend the way in which we understand components, parts, time itself, matter itself, sets, categories, names, this kind of stuff, language itself. They admit. Now, isn't that interesting? What does that sound to you like? Anybody in the chat? What does it sound like the atheist is describing when they say there's a necessary state of being that precedes all time, space, and matter that necessarily couldn't be understood, explained, described with classical laws of logic, categories, matter, behaviors, particulars? What does it sound like? Anybody? Sounds like it sounds like the Trinity. Sounds like God.
I can't always admit to some of them, which is bluntly kind of annoying because it would give me some serious street cred. The ones that I can, like, admit to, I went to the island of Socotra, which was between Yemen and Somalia, and we got there via a cement cargo ship and just sailed through pirate waters for a few days, and it was really a ship that was not fit for purpose, but it was the safest of options. Properly bonkers, that expedition. This series, I slept in a rat's nest. No joke, an actual rat's nest. They would not leave me alone all night.
No one cares.